which largely it has been actually the research. There's a recent research by the lady Nelisiwe Buddha from the University of Northwest. But I think in terms of the South African context, we can get learners, for that matter, more interested if actually the history of math is being introduced in primary school, in the curriculum. Because, I mean, for one to know about famous last theorem, or Andrew Wiles and whoever at a university level and all of that, when a child could be so much interested at a younger age, I think if we can get to that level where, I don't know how can that be pushed, because it's a political space, that one. But where the curriculum covers in primary, other than just the arithmetic and all of that, covers the pure historical aspect of the mathematics, such that learners become so much interested that when they grow up, they are role models. That it's not just going to be your Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, and all of that, because those are the only 3, 4, 5 people they know. They wouldn't know about Pierre de Fermat. They wouldn't know about who and who. So I think there's that element, but also with us mathematicians and also mathematical teachers, I'm talking on both sides, whether you go the MSc way, the pure mathematical science, or the mathematical education way. The problem that we do, we also come along as treating the ethnomathematics as a pseudoscience. That's how we even define it in our papers. And when we say it's a pseudoscience, already people believe that this is not mathematics at all. So we are actually disrespecting those Ndebele women from Mpumalanga who created this without even going to school. Do you understand? So there's that element where we, the educated ones, are actually pinning down the very nature or the very love of mathematics from others.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for a comment. I want to kind of maybe illustrate your comment in a slightly different setting, which will be more easily understandable for those who might want it to disagree with you. And this is the context of music. So if you take music, right, you can be very sophisticated technically in music. You can have studied like 10 years, practicing piano 10 hours every day, and have very sophisticated technique, and give a very sophisticated concert of your beautiful technique. Now, that will be beautiful music, sure, it will be. But this doesn't mean that if you're doing music just as a hobby, or you maybe even discovered your own music with your own instrument you had at home, ethno music, right? That's not music. It doesn't mean that this other thing isn't music. It might even sound better a lot of times. And we know this very well because traditional folk music in different cultures is so beautiful. And in fact, maybe some of the most beautiful music is created when you try to combine the traditional folk music with a bit of studying and an academic approach, and kind of try to do some kind of hybrid of the two. A good example of this is jazz, which was basically created out of merger of several different cultures of music. So I completely agree with your comment. And I think acknowledging that mathematics is part of our everyday lives requires moves towards in the direction that you're suggesting. Otherwise, it will remain to be solve for X without, you know, I have so many sessions with students, school, university. I ask them, do you know what it means to solve for X? No. Many of them don't know what it means. Did you want to make a comment?
What you were saying, Dr. Shiva, she has a University of the Grandmothers, is where they actually preserve indigenous knowledge. That's with the science, because of the seeds and all these GMO foods. So they want to preserve the indigenous knowledge of science. So on your particular thing, start in a university incorporating the elders as part of it, preserving the mathematical knowledge. Because there's a lovely game that they use, similar to Go, but it's an African game.
Yeah.
Can you see? And that is pure maths. And the kids play it. Yes, similar to Go. So it's, but they also about your animals. So, and that is pure maths. So see that knowledge, as I said, creates similar what Dr. Shiva created in India, preserving the indigenous knowledge of maths.
I still don't know why I have to solve for X. But I think I particularly deal with data in the space that I work, and at the moment, and I have a dream, you know, and what a dream it is if we started with in grade 8 with 15,000 learners, and 15,000 learners write their NSC exam. I mean, so between that, at the moment, we've got less than a third of learners going to sit in our district for mathematics, for a pure mathematics exam. And so that's maybe a question, or at the same time asking, I mean, why do learners not take mathematics? And is it because we don't focus on the why
More on the X.
rather than just the doing and the processes? Because I heard earlier the gentleman unpack a sort of a recipe of having to teach yourself and you know, that kind of thing. So a lot of learners, I mean, they drop out of mathematics. And teachers focus on what they need to do and how they need to do it. And that really isn't, or is it, the solution? Because still, I mean, a lot of learners leave the subject. And a lot of learners toss up, and then they go, as a family member of mine said, they go the easy math route, which is your math lit. And the math lit advisors don't like you to say that, you know. And again, the universities also don't like you to say that. They don't really look at the kids who do math lit. You know, they look at the kid who either got a 50% or even a 49% in mathematics to go through, because apparently the foundations are very different. So, yeah.
Probably that's my problem I have, is the narrative must change, because people think doing maths lit, you are stupid, so the maths applied. Give me a maths lit paper, I will fail it myself. Give me a solve for X and a Y, in my sleep I can do it. It's a matter of how you adapt to that particular, so but we are instilling this idea that maths lit, you are stupid. And maths applied, you are now. That is, and as I said before, we grew up with maths. And you know our husband, we do maths. That's our culture. I remember we had to survive, and we had to gamble, dice for money. That is pure maths. We had to probability, 5 and 2 is 7. From a young age, I had to know 4 plus 3, double 6. We had to play cards. That's I had to count the cards. You don't know what card is? That is all our culture, and that is how we played. We played Magoose as the multiples of 4. Anytime they'll stop you, you must know the multiples of 4. So we played all these mathematically games, which is not being seen. So that whole idea, the pedagogy of play, I think that's what's missing. We are more concerned that caps must be aligned to if the caps, let's go and put on our hats, our thinking hats, and forget the caps. And just play with maths, and that's what's missing. The kids don't play with maths. My love for maths came up because of we played doing maths.
Hi everyone. So I can only really talk from my own personal experience in mathematics, starting from school level. Before I started university, when I was in high school, I was actually more interested in science, in physics, because I think there you can see a lot of applications in the real world. And I think at that stage I could already see some of the connections with mathematics. I think I was lucky enough to have a very good teacher. So in physics, for example, I don't know at what age you learn Newton's second law. Like F equals ma. You can just take A to be the second derivative of position with respect to time. That you might learn in grade 12. I'm not too sure what the grade 12 curriculum is. So there's some mathematics that features there, but I was still more interested in the physics. because I was interested in understanding how the world works. So I was approaching mathematics from a science perspective. But then as I arrived at university, I started to realize that maths is can be a lot more abstract, and it can open the doors for creativity and imaginative thinking. Maths, you're not necessarily bound by rules. You, in fact, encouraged to break the rules in mathematics, if anything. And another thing I learned in university is mathematics is a human activity. It's not an activity that's necessarily done by a machine. It's done by the human brain. And we all make mistakes, and sometimes by making those mistakes, new things are born.
So how did you master mathematics, Josh?
How did I master mathematics? Wow. So we just had this discussion now. Mathematics is such a diverse subject, such a diverse field. So I wouldn't call myself a master of all of mathematics. Maybe I'm a master of a very, very, very tiny, specific field of mathematics that I did my master's thesis on. But so in high school, I did quite well in high school, but high school is very computational. So you sort of learn problems, you read the exam solutions, and you memorize the algorithm, the quadratic formula. This is how I solve the roots of the quadratic equation, etc. That's high school. You get to university, you're a bit frightened with prove that the square root of 2 is irrational. What does it mean for something to be irrational? So that's the first thing you have to unpack. So mastering high school mathematics was just by learning the rules. Mastering undergraduate university mathematics, you have to engage with your peers, you have to engage with your lecturers. Mathematics, it can feel like you're doing it in isolation, but I think it's actually community-based. I'm an extrovert. I get so much joy and enthusiasm by talking with others, sharing my ideas, learning from others, learning from people younger than me, learning from people older than me, attending lectures that I'm not meant to be in that lecture, but being there anyway. So mastering school mathematics is probably a bit more computational and algorithmic based. Trying to master undergraduate university, you really have to dig into trying to understand mathematical proofs. This is pure math. I'm speaking specifically about pure mathematics. Applied mathematics is something different. But if you want to focus on pure mathematics, it's reading proofs, trying to be creative, writing your own proof for the irrationality of the square root of 2. And I think once you choose a subject in pure mathematics, you're actually free to do your own creative thinking and pose your own problems. I mean, one thing I never thought of until I reached university mathematics is why are there more real numbers than rational numbers? First you have to ask, what is a real number? Why are there the same amount of rational numbers as counting numbers, as natural numbers? Surely there are more integers than natural numbers. It's very intuitive, but they actually all end up having the same size if you think about it long enough.
and how to understand size.
Yeah, and how to understand size and different concepts of infinity, that there are actually different types of infinity out there. Maths opens this huge door of, it's a rabbit hole into like a world of exploration. And I think that's how we should encourage maths in high school and undergraduate level, is that it's literally, you're going on this ship into this vast ocean, exploring everything. That your mind can consider. And from my own personal experience, I'm now at this place where I have to decide what topic do I want to do for my PhD. And that's actually causing me a lot of stress because there's so much mathematics out there. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about...
Any questions for Josh?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to study further mathematics?
Oh, good question. So, when I started university, I was very interested in physics, like I said. But then I took pure math, like the math first year course. and I was just hooked to mathematics. Like university mathematics is very different to high school mathematics, and I was very like philosophically minded, and maths can be quite philosophical. So I was very attracted to that aesthetic of mathematics. And there's a certain aesthetic for mathematics, and it's like how it's like beautiful and abstract. And when I decided to do honors in mathematics instead of physics, was I wanted to learn more pure mathematics so that I could apply it in physics. And I'm still like, that's possibly what I might want to do my PhD in. It's like just like sort of look at this intersection between mathematics and physics. There's huge research being done in developing new mathematics just for physics or.
Chat to Kishan there.
Yeah, exactly. I already have. Yeah. But not only physics. We've talked about art, linguistics, music. It's maths has applications everywhere. There's a famous mathematician, Eugenia Cheng. She works in Chicago, I think.
She works in a school of art, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So she teaches really abstract mathematics, an area called category theory, not to science students, but to art students. And probably in first year. And category theory is a relatively new subject of mathematics, born halfway through the 20th century. And it's known to be quite difficult and quite abstract, but also very beautiful. It opens like lines of new discovery. And she teaches that to art students, and for a purpose, because art students can think differently than science students. Art is about being creative. I would argue maths is about being creative. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you so much.
Zurab asked earlier how does Josh master mathematics. I had the pleasure of having Josh in my class for the last week, and it's so nice to have Josh in class. He asks a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And even sometimes I call him, I accuse you for spoiling my lecture a couple times. Because he would ask a question in which I was about to explain what's about to happen. And then Josh would be saying things like, oh, but if this is like this, and he was saying something, and I said, Josh, I was about to say that. But thank you. Which means that he engaged with the material, right? He engaged with the material, he asked good questions. Asking good question, I think it's also learning.
And not to be afraid to ask questions.
Yes.
I think at school you're around your peers and friends, you're a bit shy, you're a bit scared, you don't want to ask a silly question that might make you seem
Stupid.
silly or something. Yeah. But I think encouraging students to ask questions is very good. And
Don't be afraid to be wrong. As well, right?
being wrong. Mathematicians are wrong
all the time. All the time.
There's no mathematician who is right all the time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example where something was born out of being wrong.
I mentioned this in class the other day.
Yeah.
We're talking about sequences of continuous function, converges pointwise. Yeah. So there was a concept in mathematics that we say certain things converges in a certain sense and so on and so forth. And Cauchy actually made a mistake. He thought something's going to happen, and then somebody else found that actually this is not true, and then a new type of convergence was born out of that. And non-Euclidean geometry is another one.
And another example was, there was a famous British mathematician. His name was, I don't know what his first name was, but his surname was Hardy. What is Hardy's first name?
George?
Hardy was a...
It's GH. It's GH.
Hardy was a pure mathematician, and he towards his old age, before the 1940s, he realized he'd spent most of his life just studying pure mathematics, and he wanted to defend why he did that.
And he wrote an apology.
And he wrote an essay called The Mathematician's Apology. And the apology is meant to be like defense, so a mathematician's defense. And in that essay, he argues that mathematics is at heart an aesthetic discipline, and it gains purity and beauty regardless of its applications.
It's actually not even an apology, I think, because it says very bad things about applied mathematics in that book, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Hardy made a mistake in that essay. He said mathematics, or at least pure mathematics, has no applications in the real world.
Not true.
That's not true.
Yeah.
So, most of us know what prime numbers are. We're just discussing prime numbers now and applications in cryptography. Cryptography was only born after Hardy's time. So Hardy was wrong.
Yeah.
And Hardy was a brilliant number theorist. An example of someone...
By the way, Hardy was the mentor of Ramanujan, those of you who've heard of Ramanujan.
Yeah.
Talking about comparing sizes of infinities, Georg Cantor comes up, who was the first to mathematically study this question, and he's also the one who said, in mathematics, the art of proposing a question must be held of higher value than solving it. And this relates to what we were discussing now, the importance of asking questions in mathematics.
That's a very simple question for you. What was your master's on? I'm interested in your love of physics. And so I want to know, so what did you do with that? Now you're a master's in science.
Kind of related to physics, at a very theoretical level. So I became interested in, mostly because of my supervisor, Professor David Holgate. Some of you may know him. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Science here. He taught a course in 2022 in topology, and we were discussing real numbers, for example, and topology is sort of like a generalization of the study of real numbers and continuity. And topology itself has lots of applications in physics. This course that I'm attending on Hilbert spaces, Hilbert spaces was basically designed for quantum mechanics. A Hilbert space is a very particular, a Hilbert space is a special example of what is a topological space. So my master's thesis was kind of like studying topology, but from the point of view of order, like how we order things. Like 1 is less than 2, 2 is less than 3. But if I order family members, so I have a sister, I have a mom and a dad. My mom and dad sit here, they're not comparable to each other, and my sister and myself sit below them, but we're not comparable to each other. That's some sort of example of ordering. I look at the relationship between ordering and studying topology, that sort of intersection. So the real line, for example, the real numbers, that's something I study quite a lot, and that's an example of something I study.
Oh, thank you so much. What an experience. I have a question here. My name is Zoran. I'm actually an online mathematical tutor across South Africa.
Okay.
And my main idea is to make sure that I keep mathematics alive.
Yes.
Because most of kids are really struggling with mathematics and they're running away. So I just want to ask a question to say that how do I really ensure that this concept of mathematics is being understood by learners? Because I'm in a space wherein I have to explain factorization, for an example, but I want to make sure that it makes sense to them. So I've got 10 topics that I need to link up to what is really happening in the world. So how can I really make sure that this math is being understood? More especially with 10 topics. Trigonometry, I have to break it down. Am I supposed to give the background of trigonometry? I've got the probability. Should I have to give, how can I really maneuver around that space?
So you're tutoring online?
Yes.
I think that's a very difficult job. For me, mathematics is, I said this earlier, I love engaging with people like in a classroom environment physically. So I think online is quite difficult. So I have a lot of respect for you doing that online.
I think none of us know what to do when it comes online tutoring. This is incredibly difficult.
Breaking down the maths in high school, breaking it down, because I understand that when you are doing a research, you are focusing on a specific area. So it's very real. Like you are able to make it real. You are able to spend more time and understand and link it up. But now I've got 10 topics. I need to link them up. So my question is that how can I really maneuver around so that even in a classroom like this. So that's what I'm saying.
Can I just add to that? I think, I don't know the panel there, but what I've heard so far is they are all pure maths, right? And that particular question, I'm assuming, is the pedagogy of mathematical teaching. And this is something I'm not disrespecting you, but you don't have actually access to, am I correct? And there's a difference between knowing a subject and teaching. So that to me is two different aspects. I would like it to be like that because your application understanding, I would love to have a conversation with me, my pedagogical aspects. And then that will get that lovely idealistic, you know, that Goldilocks moment, just right. So that is what I think also is missing. So what your question is basically is a pedagogical aspect with regards to mathematical teaching.
I can maybe say something. I don't know if this is going to answer your question. I went to a presentation recently, and then this person, as any mathematicians normally would start their talk, is that there's a title slide, page 1, definition. And I have learned over the years to not do that in my presentations, because you lost people in the technicality. Because us humans, we like stories, right? If we know what the story is, then we get engaged, right? It's like you go to a movie, someone play your trailer, you're like, that sounds like an interesting story, I'm gonna watch that movie. So I think that something like that might be a good idea, not to start immediately with the content, but say something about it. So this person, for instance, was saying that he's interested in numbers, a collection of numbers, for which you can add to get a set of different numbers. So for instance, why is our currency, right, is in terms of a unit of 1, 2, 5, and 10. Because you can create, you can make 13 out of it, you can make 14 out of it. It's enough to have 1, 2, 5, and 10, for instance, right? So he just said that, okay, here's a number, I can partition it like this, here's a number, I didn't understand what happens, what's going on. And then at the end of the presentation, somebody asked, sorry, it's a bit too abstract for my taste, what's going on? And then he gave this example of currency. And just like that, the whole presentation makes sense. Had he done it from the beginning, maybe the audience wouldn't spend an hour, right, wondering what's going on. So just also just presenting your work. And this comes from talking to people, actually, from presenting his experience. And I like to always, if someone tell me, this is what you're going to expect from this talk, this is the story, and then you start with the technicalities, then you have more reason to follow, I feel like. Yeah. I don't know if that helps, but anyway.
There's a lot of input in here.
Yeah.
Would you like to go next?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I think just to add what one of my colleagues said here, that teaching mathematics online, it's a very, very complex thing, especially if you look at the background of our students. You need an engagement to gauge what kind of pre-knowledge does your learner has, because you cannot start somewhere. First you get the person in hand, and then you pick him up. If you can go there, it's going to be a very complex thing. So online teaching is very much complex, I must tell you. From my personal experience, I did my bachelor's degree with UNISA online, to an extent that I had to leave my home place to come to Pretoria to go and get things face to face. It is very difficult. Otherwise, you're going to push memorization, which is a problem for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was in COVID in grade 10, so it was online in majority of like when I learned foundations of mathematics and the future of mathematics. And funny enough, online was when I actually fell in love with maths more. I know that's unexpected, but our teachers online, thankfully we were able to do online teaching, was, I don't know, it's projects in maths. Obviously with exams and tests, I mean, that's how everyone gets tested. But with projects, to be honest, if you go home, you're bound to use the internet, you're bound to use your friend. But then let's use that. Let's allow that for students, and let students engage with one another. In grade 10, I was learning, I think it was trigonometry. And my teacher gave me a question. I was linking trigonometry to my walk home from school, and I was like, okay, no, I don't understand this. And it took maths into real life, and that's how I felt. I took pure maths in grade 10 to matric, and a lot of my friends took maths lit. And I found maths lit helped a lot with trying to understand real world examples with pure maths. And that for me was a key thing. I Googled non-stop to say, how would you link trigonometry to a calculator? Very random. But you know how much insight, and I'd speak to friends about it, I'd speak to my lecturer, well back then my teachers online, and for me that was one of the biggest like blessings, that I was able to grasp more, and that was just understanding more of the real world behind maths than just pure is the formula and use it. And
Thank you, Michelle. I mean, sorry, thank you, Sarah, and Michelle is going to
Yeah,
also.
I think this applies to just teaching in general, and like you mentioned, it's a movie trailer. So sometimes when you teach maths, especially the more advanced the level gets at high school, when you're dealing with things that are complex to understand, where possible, give a real world sort of application or relation. So like why do we split the notes up like that? Or when I did statistics, this was like a funny way. My teacher was like, oh, by the end of the year, you'll know how to win the lotto. So it's like, who doesn't want to know how to win the lotto? Of course, I'll pay attention to every class. But something like that, where it's like, oh, okay, so we're not just going to be playing with numbers in random coordinations and hoping for an answer. It's like, well, there's actual method to the madness, and there's things that we're doing that we can see tangible effects with. So statistics is one of those that is a bit more easily applicable. You know, you can flip a coin. It's, you know, what's the odds of heads or tails or what have you. But if, where possible, if you can find some sort of connection to be like, at the end, you'll be able to figure this out, or what we're dealing with is used in this sphere of learning, or in this world, or economics, business, something to relate to anything that we already know, I think is very helpful.
This is going to be the last question before the next presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think this is interesting because the teaching of mathematics, like you said, is not as the same thing as just the knowing the mathematics. The pedagogy is something of its own. You might be good and you know the thing, but now to explain it to students, it becomes something different. But to add to what has already been said, I think what makes it difficult for us to find ways of application, or even the history that they were talking about, to come up with the history of what I'm going to teach you, and then thinking of it now as it's a lot, because I have these 10 topics to teach and I need to find out the history of the 10 topics and the application of the 10 topics. What makes it feel heavy and difficult is because we don't have that. So there still has to be a lot of learning from your side as a teacher. You still need to take time to know the history. You need to take time to know the application, because we did not have that from school. So the challenge starts there. We did not have that experience from school. We did not have the teachers who had the history and the application. All we had is the methods. Solve, and this is the formula. This is how you get to the answer. So if we want to change that for our students, then it will take us a lot of sacrifice of our time, learning. Then when we have that knowledge, it's going to be easy for us to even find the links between these topics and not see it as different separate topics that are a lot, and that I need to find the history and the application of each. But it will be something that flows and links to each other. So I think it would take us to spend a lot of time, sacrifice a lot of our time out of a lot of other difficult things that we experience as we teach, to go back and try to catch up on that which we did not experience, so that we can create it for our students. And then when they are teachers, they will do better than us. So it will take someone to sacrifice more, especially in our context as South Africans and people who are from our background. Maybe other people are a bit far, others we are at different levels. So we started at different levels when it comes to mathematics. Most of us, we did not have that experience of teachers who were applicational of teachers who had the history. So it means that therefore to get to that level, we'll have to do a lot more to actually get to a certain position. So my feeling or my thinking is that it would take us to do more. It would take us to attend spaces like these when people are talking about those things, so that we even know where to find information, where we can find even those kind of examples, which I think we are at advantage these days because there's a lot of information available on the internet and different spaces where we can. But it is not an easy thing. It would take a lot from us to catch up. We are far behind. There's a lot to catch up on. Thank you.
That's such a very to the point comment. Thank you so much for that. That's really to the point comment. I want to just maybe also very quickly just add a third component. You mentioned application and the story, the history. But there is also a third one which is very important as to why. We learn methods, but why does it work? Why does the method work even sometimes? And so indeed there are so many components that are missing in the standard way mathematics is taught, not only at school but also at university. And also to come back to your point when you said that the panel here is mostly representing the research side of mathematics, but there is also now the research side of mass education and education in general, and you're absolutely right. And we are missing that. At the university, well, I mean, someone as passionate as Eder maybe doesn't need such an input, but there are so many lecturers, I must say. I hope Eder will agree with me. There are so many lecturers in mathematics who do need input. And I mean, also math teachers sometimes do know a lot of mathematics, sometimes not. So it is really coming together in terms of expertise and background, it is really coming together on equal terms that is needed, not just one of them kind of telling the other, I know everything and you don't know nothing. Coming together of the two communities is something that Sethuti and I often discuss, coming together of the communities of education and research in mathematics. The next presentation.
Hi. So before I start, I kind of just want to get an idea of the demographics in the room. So how many of us here are educators? Okay, that's basically all of us. How many are researchers? Okay, awesome. Do we have any students in the house? Students? Yes. Okay, awesome. Does anyone fall into any other category that I haven't mentioned? Okay, so I covered everything. Wonderful. Yeah. Before we all got here, we all started much lower than we did here. You know, you were learning how to write the number one before you even knew what the number one was. Does anyone care to share their first memory of maths, whether it was formal learning or something that you had at home with your parents, or just your first memory of maths? Yes.
I remember grade 1 bottle caps addition. So the numbers were written, but we had to physically put the caps and then count them all together to make them.
Yeah, I think I finished grade 1 without knowing that I was doing maths. So I also used to use bottle caps, and I was a little bit lucky because other learners were taught certain methods, but I already knew how to use bottle caps and other stuff. And my book that year in grade 1, I didn't get any answer incorrect. So they took that book to frame it to the principal's office. And then when they moved me in the next year to grade 3, then when my mother asked, why are you moving this child to grade 3? They said, no, because he understands maths. And I didn't know what maths is, because throughout the year, we were taught maths in isiZulu, saying izibalo. So all I knew was that I'm doing izibalo without knowing that this maths that my aunt is talking about, my aunt was doing standard 9, grade 11, and she was always complaining about maths. And I said, she would say, maths is hard, and I was doing izibalo, not understanding that izibalo is actually maths. So my encounter with knowing what maths is was actually grade 3 than grade 1. Yes.
So we've got some tough achievers among us. And
No.
My grade 1 book is definitely not framed anyway. Does anyone else have any examples? Okay, that's fine. So similarly, my first memory of maths, like learning maths, was the counters. So I had beans, like a little tin of beans, and you know they tell you, okay, a line of 10 beans, and then if you subtract 3, and you physically count 1, 2, 3 away, and then it's like count how many you have left. And I remember, because I kind of just know numbers from before I went to school, like, you know, children's books and cartoons, they teach you how to count. And then we learned how to write the numbers, which someone got their pen license a little late. But it was like, okay, so I've seen the number 9, now I can write the number 9. Now I have 9 counters in front of me. And I just remember thinking, it's so cool that this image, this symbol, actually has a physical representation. It means something. It's not just this thing that comes after 8 when I'm reciting the number line. You know, it has a physical meaning, and this is one of them. So that was my first memory of math, and I was fortunate enough that I'm a very curious person. I think there's a lot of the people here who mentioned they are passionate about mathematics. I wouldn't say my passion is so much in maths, it's more so in curiosity. For example, I'm learning a 5th language, so it's Spanish, and because I already know French, and Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Italian are in the same language group, I find myself kind of being able to read Portuguese and trying to make sense of Italian, even though I've never tried to formally learn either of them. I'm just very curious about how things are connected, how the world works, how anything works. And so maths was the same in school. And I was fortunate enough to have a primary school teacher who, she wasn't the most excitable, lively person. She was actually very gentle and soft-spoken, but she was passionate about nurturing that curiosity. And I think that propelled me into being like, oh no, school is a safe space. School is a place where you can ask questions. And I went to 2 different primary schools, and similarly, when I went to the 2nd primary school, very passionate teachers, passionate about their students, passionate about their students nurturing. And I was a top achiever in primary school. I went to a top achieving girls' school. I'm not a top achiever. I think an experience a lot of people have in university. I had it at like 13 years old in high school, and I said, okay, wow, you know, you quickly move on because teenagehood is dramatic and things happen. So I was like, okay, you know what, I'm not the best, but I'm still curious, and that doesn't, you know, not being the smartest person in my class doesn't mean I should be any less curious. High school was brutal, to say the least, I think specifically for mathematics. I did the Cambridge system, so I did GCSEs and then I did A-levels. And at GCSE, I didn't have teachers who tried to nurture curiosity, more so they tried to get the syllabus done. And I, obviously, for obvious reasons, there was that. But I think also the school that I went to was very serious about maintaining their status. They wanted to be the top achieving girls' school. So I could do the processes. Did I understand what any of it meant? Not really, but I could do them. So if you had asked 15-year-old me, hey, do you want to pursue a degree in maths? I would have looked at you like you were crazy, like absolutely not me, not in this lifetime. So don't tell 15-year-old me that in 10 years she'll be doing a master's degree in math. But it was one of those things where I kind of just resigned myself. I said, it is what it is. I don't really like it, but I have to do it. I did, however, like physics because that's where I found a mentor in my physics teacher who, again, encouraged curiosity. A very soft-spoken man. He would let us watch, who is it? Bill Nye, the science guy, in class sometimes. Because I remember one day he was like, what do you guys want to learn? And we were like, nothing. And he was like, I can't allow that, but you know, we can, if you tell me what you want to do, we can do that. You know, take a break from the syllabus. And we watched Bill Nye, the science guy. And we ended up discussing a topic that kind of came later in the syllabus, but he was like, you know what, why not, let's just move it here now because we've already seen a video, it's piqued your interest, let's nourish that. And so in my academics, so we did our GCSE exams, and in that we learned about, you know, derivation, integration, all of that. And then a year later in physics, we were introduced to the idea, the concept that you mentioned about the relationship between acceleration, velocity, distance, and how if you you know, do different things with respect to time, you can go up and down that ladder. And so he mentioned that to us, and we kind of just looked at him blankly, and he was like, you guys, you know how to do this. You did it last year in maths. And we said, well, we know how to do it technically. We can do the computational steps, but we don't fully understand it. And he was gracious enough to sort of take time out of his double lessons, that was 2 hours, to walk us through the mathematical concepts of it all. So he kind of retaught us integration, you know, derivatives, all of that in physics. And to this day, that's how I claim that, yes, I learned the computational steps of those a year before, but I fully, truly learned and understood it a year later. Similarly, in second year university, I had a lecturer called Zurab Yanelitz, who also nurtured my curiosities to the extent that we made a musical about math. What was kind of a passing comment in class where I think he was saying something about music, and then I was like, yeah, I did theatre in school, and then I was like, we should do a musical about that, and then he said, yeah, and then 2 years later it actually happened. So I think there's so many curious students, and I think at different stages we lose them because their curiosity isn't nurtured. And I think for me, I was grateful that people kept bringing me back, you know. So I had resigned myself to maths, not for me. I do like the practical applications of it, and did civil engineering. So when you put maths in a building or in a road and you actually see the maths that you're doing applied in the room that you're sitting in, you know, something as simple as that. Like somebody did very complex calculations to make sure the ceiling isn't falling on us. I really enjoyed that. And then, you know, I got to sort of see the other side of it, you know, the not just the application part of it, or not just in the ways that I was used to or accustomed to. And I think had it not been for different mentors and educators at different points in my life sort of allowing me to explore my curiosity, I think I very much would not be in this room with all of you. And I think there is something to be said about nurturing curious students who aren't necessarily the strongest students, because like I said, in high school I was absolutely not the strongest student, but I was curious, and that curiosity kept me going at every turn of the way, and here I am today. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Michelle. We'll come back to you. Any questions for Michelle? It seems like curiosity is almost like a necessary condition to succeed in mathematics, right? So then the question of how to master mathematics maybe reduces, mathematically it reduces to the question of how to spark curiosity in mathematics. Yes?
Yes, I think it's more for all of the mathematicians and all the research, everybody here. You say with curiosity, kids are born with natural curiosity. They are born also with a natural number sense. That's part of our survival. Our physiology is also part of our time clock. So we are born with this innate nature. So what makes you guys different to the others? How do we get that brilliant mathematicians to be...
I actually have a very simple answer to that. I think we're just lucky that our curiosity wasn't hushed.
No,
I think everybody has curiosity, but we were just lucky that ours wasn't hushed.
Because if we know this, then why are the minority of our kids, as Ronnie said, don't want to do maths? Do you see? So and even that, and because our lifestyles, I mean, we played balls and stuff, they played like this. Yeah. And that is reality. Perhaps the scientists should change to the reality.
Computer games. I'm going to say something about that just now.
That's what I was saying. So perhaps we should then create that mathematical curiosity, that math in this, because we played games. I said, I played dice, and I still don't know mathematical integers. I've done maths, I've done well, so I'm a genius. I've done at university and under that. And once I started tutoring maths, my nieces, I'm like, well, what's an integer? I know solve X. I didn't study maths with labels. And you say, no, I just did it. So I'm quite curious. How does a person become that mathematical exact same, two next other. This one just Gibson, but this one is still is a 40% endurance. I don't know.
I think, could I?
Like we 8 kids. I'm the only one that gets the maths a little bit more than the others. I'm really serious.
So let's hear the answer to your beautiful question from Michelle.
I think the education system is set up for a standardized student. And the reality is most students aren't not the standardized students. I don't even know where the standardized student came from, because clearly it doesn't represent even the majority of the students that we see and we have. Because I know I was not the standard student, and the education system that I was in was definitely not molded for me. I did not achieve because of it, I achieved despite it. And that's because I had other things supporting me. There was other things around me that could allow that to happen. But if you live a very adverse life, there's things against you, and including the education system, what is there to help you stay on track? And because unfortunately you need the education system to go on to tertiary education, to go on further and further, but I think the standardized way of teaching is not, I don't know who the standard is, I don't know where they got the standardized student from, but it clearly doesn't work for most students. So yes, it does work for some. That's why you said you could be teaching 8 students, one of them just gets it, the other is like, I'm so lost, I don't know a single thing you just said. But that's not a fault of the student that doesn't get it. It just means they have other needs that maybe were not fulfilled while the teacher was teaching or explaining. That gap sort of needs to be bridged for a lot of students. And once you start falling behind, because I think high school and all of that happens at a very sensitive age. I don't know, but teenagehood was brutal for me personally. You cannot pay me to go back. It was brutal. So you already have so much going on in here. And externally, you don't even want to say you're struggling, because now you're the only one struggling. No one else is struggling. Reality is most of the students are struggling. No one wants to be the one to say, I'm struggling. So I think there needs to be a change in how the system operates and how it caters to students, especially students who are not naturally inclined in certain ways.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. The question is, whose responsibility is to nurture curiosity? That's one question, and you alluded to schools are teaching to standard curriculum, etc. But in the era of social media and TikTok Academy, whose responsibility is to be a mathematics champion, influencer?
Yeah, I think it might be different for everyone, but I still think the actual person standing in front of me has a lot more weight than the person I don't know on my TikTok phone, because ultimately I can get up on TikTok now and say, actually guys, I have a PhD in maths and number theory is all wrong as they taught it to you. And that's kind of how misinformation spreads. So anyone can claim anything online, but if you're standing in front of me, yes, you could claim certain things, but there's more people in the room to be like, actually no, hold up, that's not true, or things like those. But I think there's a lot of places for curiosity to come from. I don't think there's a shortage of that. I think it's expressing that curiosity in the classroom that there's not a lot of space for. And I do understand there's a set syllabus that has to get done, but I think the people who set the syllabus and the people who teach the syllabus need to come together and make some compromises somewhere along the way, because clearly it's not working for the students. So the people who have the hands-on experience can say, listen, you told us to do this, it's not working. We suggest incorporating this and then having a discussion on how things can be changed to suit the students' needs better.
Hi everyone. So what I have found just in general from school to university, I know I'm only second year, but had some experience already, is actually just going from formulas to just pure foundations in university. That for me was my transition. So at school, not the biggest fan. I loved maths. Well, I say I loved the maths, but I was good at it. I carried on, then COVID hit, and that's when I got exposed to amazing teachers that taught online in whole new ways, and that for me, just bringing maths to real life. And you know, I thought I loved maths, but then that changed when I went to university. I loved maths in university. but not in a weird way. Not in a, oh, okay, cool, she likes maths. It was more, as you spoke about, is your curiosity with it. My whole love for learning has changed since maths. I mean, 3 weeks in first year, I got taught what set theory was. And don't ask me to explain what an empty set is. My maths lecturer told me, and I was like, no. Went home, tried to, figure it out. And that's when I was like, no, okay, this is actually really cool. And even though tests came past and didn't do so well, and more tests came past, and that whole thing of, okay, no, it's cool, I want to become a mathematician, to, oh wait, I can't even get a 60% in a maths test, how am I going to do this? And then in semester 2 of first year, I was speaking very briefly with my maths lecturer, and he turned around to me and said something that quite literally has changed my life. He said, it's a quote from Albert Einstein that said, love is a better tutor than duty. And that was an eye-opener for me. And for me, I was like, wow, if someone looked at me with my marks, with my matric certificate, with my first year marks, I would not be standard, I would be below average, I would be just a number, a student number. But if someone looked at me with passion and just an excitement to maths, in my first meeting with Professor Janelitz, he just looked at me with, I just got so excited because I was like, wow, someone's looking at me as if I want to be heard, I want to share my love, I want to share my passion. And that for me was when I was like, you know what, this is it. I haven't mastered maths in the slightest. I'm hopefully soon to maybe master probably like a formula, that's pretty much it. But I'm just loving learning. That for me, learning non-stop. And to be honest, I'm actually studying physiology as well as maths. But there's just, and I love linking between the two. Oh, that's exciting. But there's nothing better than a foundation of maths and proving something on your own. And what I've loved with, I've done some research with Professor Janelitz, is you give the student the answer and they can figure out how to prove it. Do you know how many different ways people can think, collaborate, and work that together? So, yeah, that's
By the way, there is a poster presentation that Sarah will be in charge of, based on what she said right at the end there. I'm showing the poster now if you'd like to engage with her later. Any questions for Sarah?
So you mentioned that you had online classes. So was your whole high school experience from year 10 onwards online, or was it as an intervention online?
grade 10, 11, and half of 12 was online. So I wrote prelims and finals in person. And that was my high school experience. Oh, and I had a matric dance. Yeah. But other than that, where maths really started was online.
And how would you say they tried to mirror the online compared to the face-to-face? How was it?
I would say I was very fortunate enough with the school I went to. When we heard about COVID, we actually had a lot of practices on how to do it. We were on teams, an hour every subject. Everyone had to show their face to show that they're not sleeping, and it was very rigid, very online. We still had exams, which, I mean, I think half the students cheated, but like, what do you expect? But a lot of them, even though it was COVID and you weren't allowed to see your friend and a lot of strict things, obviously a lot of people went around that. And school teachers made use of that. They're like, right guys, I know you're going to have a sleepover with that one friend. Why don't you teach them about trigonometry and how you got to your friend's house using trigonometry? Like, it was very much, they used the fact that we can use Google. ChatGPT wasn't really a thing yet. and friends and all of that. And we actually collaborated more together, and I learned more about maths than in grade 9 in person.
We have time for one more question for Sarah.
It's nice to hear that during the whole schooling phases that you found your love for maths. Most of the people, it's the one-sided love story. I love maths and maths doesn't love me. But no, that's usually the case. It was people, they love maths, but somehow maths doesn't love them and they just give up. There's no marriage between the two. So for you, it's nice to hear, and it's an inspiring story because you do get learners that go through different phases of maths. And luckily for me, it was a two-way love story. Not married yet, but it's still a dating phase. But you see, for that, it's a nice story, it's a nice inspiration for others as well. But it could also be, as my point about, with the cognitive readiness for maths. As we said now, we know at puberty, way back when they did maths already, what they do when now in grade 12, they did already the old schoolers in grade 4. Perhaps our brain is supposed to be engaged with mathematical concepts before puberty hits. Because physiologically speaking, once you hit puberty, everything is haywire. So, I mean, I was 16 when I was in matric. 16, I was now in grade 8. So you see, so perhaps the mathematical, the neuroscience can add to this. Because they've done mind mapping and all of this with regards to neuroplasticity. So perhaps mathematical capabilities, because we are born with a number sense, should actually be, forget all the others, let's focus on language and maths within their educational, the ECD phases.